Making Bombs for Hitler. Chapter 1, 1943. The room smelled of smoke, and the light was so white that it made my eyes ache. I held Larissa's hand in a tight grip. I was her older sister after all, and she was my responsibility. It would be easy to lose her in this sea of children, and we had both lost far too much already. Larissa looked up at me. I saw her lips move, but I couldn't hear her words above the wails and screams. I bent down so that my ear was level with her lips. "Don't leave me," she said. I wrapped my arms around her and gently rocked her back and forth. I whispered our favorite lullaby into her ear. A loud crack startled us both. The room was suddenly silent. A woman in white stepped in among us. She clapped her hands sharply once more. "Children," she said in brisk German, "you will each have a medical examination." Weeping boys and girls were shoved into a long, snaking line that took up most of the room. I watched as one by one kids were taken behind a broad, white curtain. When it was Larissa's turn, her eyes went round with fright. I did not want to let go of her, but the nurse pulled her hands apart. "Lyda, stay with me." I stood at the edge of the curtain and watched as the woman made Larissa take off her nightgown. My sister's face was red with the shame. When the woman held a metal instrument to her face, Larissa screamed. I rushed up and tried to knock that thing out of the nurse's hands, but the nurse called for help and someone held me back. When they finished with Larissa, they told her to stand at the end of the room. When it was my turn, I barely noticed what they were doing. I kept my eyes fixed on Larissa. She was standing with 3 other girls. Dozens more had been ordered to stand in a different spot. When the nurse was finished with me, I slipped my nightgown back on. I was ordered to stand with the larger group, not with Larissa's. "I need to be in that group," I told the nurse, pointing to where Larissa stood, her arms outstretched, a look of panic on her face. The nurse's lips formed a thin, fat line. "No talking." She put one hand on each of my shoulders and shoved me toward the larger group. A door opened wide. We were herded out into the blackness of the night. Larissa screamed, "Lyda, don't leave me." I looked back into the room and could not see her. "I will find you, Larissa," I shouted. "I promise. Stay strong." A sharp slap across my face sent me sprawling onto the cold, wet grass. I scrambled up and tried to break through the sea of children. I had to get back to Larissa. Strong arms wrapped around my torso and lifted me up. I was thrown into the blackness with a screech of metal. The door slammed shut. Blackness. I dreamed that I was lying in a sea of humming bees. We were swinging back and forth, and I sang the lullaby under my breath, imagining that it was being rocked in Mama's arms. I opened my eyes. It was so dark that they took a few minutes to adjust. I was crammed inside a hot metal room that smelled like a dirty barn. It was so stuffy and stinky and crowded that I could barely breathe. I realized with a shock that we were moving. This was not a room after all, but a train car, the kind for cattle. It swayed back and forth. The sound was not the humming of bees, but the whispers of frightened children, and the thrumming of the train on its tracks. At least the sound of war was muffled out. Does anyone know where we're going?" I asked. The whisper stopped. A lone, thin voice answered, "To Germany, I think." My heart sank. If they took me to Germany, how would I ever find Larissa? Wherever she was, she must be feeling so frightened, so alone. I tried to stand, but with the movement of the car and the hazy light, I fell backward, one of my bare feet landing on a girl's chest. "Ow!" she cried. "I'm sorry." It was pointless to try standing, so I sat up and tried to get my bearings. In the dim light, I could see a tangle of limbs and tufts of hair. Kids were packed in so tightly that each overlapped the next. Something smelled bad, and a sloshing sound came from one corner. "What is that over there?" I asked. "No one in particular." "That's our bathroom," said the girl I stepped on. "A pail." I wrinkled my nose. All these people in one pail for a bathroom? No wonder it smelled so bad. I crawled as far away as I could from the stinky pail, moving slowly and being careful not to hurt any of the kids who were crammed in my way. When I got to the other side of the car, I saw that there was a thin seam of light framing a panel on the side. It was a door. I pounded and screamed with all my might. The children who were propped up against it stood to the side. "It won't do you any good," said a boy's voice. "We've already tried to open it."